Hello, lovelies. Welcome back to Paging Polly. I'm Jules LunaCco, and we're going to be going over the 2.1.3 updates for you guys today. So it was supposed to be 2, but we had a additional little bug that we had to work out. So we are going to be going through that. This is a much smaller change than the last one, but I was hoping to get as much out as possible. And I think we did accomplish that. We fixed a couple little things, including a couple bugs that were caught by the community. And we're just going to hop into that. So I'm going to hop over to Paging Polly. One of the first things that I actually caught while I was working is, and let me see if I can find one. I don't know if this is going to be easy to... I might not be able to find this very easily, but one of the issues that we had was that, actually, I think maybe the last this might be, yes, here we go. We had an issue where big boy models, like the Anthropic models, take a lot longer than average to do really long outputs. So if it's trying to do 4,000, 6,000, etc. tokens out, it was timing out and you would get an error, something like this. Network error, operation timed out after, this is actually 120 seconds or 120,000 milliseconds. This is how many bytes were received, network error. We have now fixed this, and this should not be popping on really long generations. As long as the streaming is still happening, the operation should not time out anymore. So that has been fixed. And then the other thing that was really fun is that if this particular error, there was a generation. So you'll see there is an output from the model. That output did go in the document, but it was not logged properly by the generation log because there was an error. So the errors were overwriting the response, the actual response. So that has also been fixed. The error should append to the end of any partial generation that comes through. So that's also been fixed. Is there anything else in generation logs? The other thing too, one of the big updates that I was so excited about for the new version, and it was the accurate token count from OpenRouter. When I do tests on my local version, which is what I develop on, and then I will do tests on my live site, which is the one we're looking at right now, to make sure that everything is working right. I do a couple extra test generations, and then I usually do one of these videos because I usually find little snippets when I do these videos. And I immediately saw that the tokens were not accurate. If you look at a couple of these, that is a clear indicator these are falling back to the tokenizer, and those are not actual accurate depictions of the tokens being sent or received. And so chase that down. I wasn't sure if that was going to come out in this release, but I did manage to get that fixed where it handles the generation ID better from OpenRouter so that we can get those accurate. So that seems to have now been fixed. If you notice anything where those tokens are not matching up to your OpenRouter account, which if you go to OpenRouter and you can go to activity, and then it should be matching up 1-to-1. This should be exactly the same as what you are seeing here. So if it is not, please let me know, and I'll know that I'm going to have to chase that down even further. But those should be matching fully for you guys as well now. Fingers crossed. Let me know if that's not, and we will try to track that down better. Okay. And then another real quick thing too that I did notice is on the timeout, I didn't get charged for that. And if you are ever wondering, did that generation go through? Was I charged for it? Always come to your OpenRouter account and then you will be able to see if you were charged or if it even went through. And then if you are hitting a max token issue, you will see this, which is length. So it's coming up against length. And this again is because the tokenizers in Paging Polly are just estimates. And I'm noticing that the divergence from the original tokenizers, it used to be pretty close, and now it's becoming very much not close. The divide is growing, which makes sense because these models are getting more expensive on the low key. So the tokens aren't necessarily going up, but I feel like their tokenizers are changing. So if you hit lengths, you just need to up your max tokens, which I'll show you in a second, in the AI settings in your project. Coming back here, we're going to go to prompts. So before, this was hiding and it was cropped under the header. And so if I zoomed in or if I had a smaller screen, like a laptop screen, I have not huge monitors, but I have decent sized monitors. And so it was fine for me, but some of you guys were having this get cut off, not only in the create new prompt, but also in the new and edit sequence. So now those are correct and those are above the header. They're not getting cut off. So even if I zoom in, everything should be completely fine there. And I'm just going to try and reset. There we go. So that should no longer be happening. It was also, I believe, happening with the managed categories. That has also been remedied. So you should be good. None of the modals should be getting trapped under that header. And that should help you guys that are on laptops or smaller screens. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Oh, this is, let's go into project. I think most of the rest of these are in project. So library, let me see. All right, I might, actually this might work. Okay, so if I just go here and I'm just going to go like this until we get to a new line. Before, as soon as it would go to a new line, if I'm typing at the end of a document, this word count guy would be over that line. It wouldn't scroll all the way to the bottom, in other words. And so this little word counter and tokenizer would go over the last line. It was driving me nuts when I was working this week. And so that has also been fixed. It's a little minor thing, but God, that was annoying the crap out of me. And I'm sure there are others of you that was also annoying. Don't worry about this handoff to Series Universe because that is coming soon. As you see here, I had updates, including the timeout that I wanted to push to you guys immediately. So I just grayed that out for right now. So that is not anything that is going to interfere because that is not really ready for you guys yet. Okay, so now let me find the real outline. Here's the real outline. And if I come to charts, this is the chart system. And this works solely with the blueprinting system that I've developed that I'm working with that is involving certain elements of the narrative physics that FFA has recently been talking about, but it is also very different than what they're doing. But we've taken on certain things like the patterns, like the steady spike drop. I think, to be honest, now I'm like even doubting myself on that. I'm not sure if they have that or if that was something that we did separately, but velocity, I believe they did talk about velocity, but they were talking about different physics of storytelling and about how like tension axis and things like that were helping with characterization. And what I was doing behind the scenes was mapping tension and creating threads and chains. So threads, chains, and the tension numbers, the -50 to +50, that's all us and paging poly, but it helps you visualize. So if I look here, so it'll show what threads are found. And these are the two main characters. So these are the main internal conflict or their kind of arc, what they're going through in the story. We have the romance, which is a romance novella. We have reincarnation, which is a reincarnation thread of them, really her recognizing him and remembering her past life. And then paranormal stakes because he is a vampire. And she was a very powerful psychic in a past life. And so we can see where the threads interact. Like right here, we can see Victor and Rhiannon's internal conflict are going to collide right here at the lowest point, which makes sense. You can also see them crossing over where hers starts lower or his starts lower than hers, but then they start crossing over where her internal conflict is getting heavier. And we can just turn these on and off. So I can click a thread and it will then not show. So I could just look at actually a more realistic one. This would be romance. Oh, I changed the color of it. Romance, Victor's internal, and then Rhiannon's. So you can see here where those would differ. Okay. And then the breakdown looks a little bit scary, especially if you have all of your threads turned on. But if I just look at one thread, for instance, these are the starting tension points, the peak, and then the end tension points for those chapters. So you can see what's going on at a chapter level that way. So you can see how those are playing out. And then let's look at velocity. So there's a velocity per chapter, and that shows kind of the speed at which things are going. We have patterns. So what kind of, I like the timeline better on this, is what's happening in these chapters. So you can see here, this will show a ghost of the table, which is the first chapter. So this is what's going on in the scenes of that chapter. And then you can see as they break out past that. Life cycle isn't really going to matter to you guys in smaller projects. Like this is a novella. So all of the threads start and end with the novella. But as we get into series mapping and universe mapping, these are going to be really important, where you can clearly see, even for larger, fuller novels, where you can see if a thread or a chain just gets dropped versus ending. So you can be like, oh, was that thread actually resolved at chapter 5, or did it just get dropped? So life cycle is going to be more important as we go forward. And then we have scene types. So this shows you the breakdown of scene, sequel, and hybrid. Scene, sequel, hybrid also really helps the AI give an idea of what's happening. Those of you that aren't familiar with scene and sequel, essentially scenes are more action points. And sequels are the pause, the retrospect. So the scene, things are happening, and sequel is usually a moment where the characters are taking a pause and are thinking about what happened in a previous scene. So you can see here where those sequels are placed versus the hybrids. And that just really helps show, honestly, the pacing of a story. Is this a slower story? There's going to be more sequel. Is it more of a scene story? There would be more scenes, so forth and so forth. So those are the charts, and it does work with, so if I turn this off, this is what it's working off of. So each chapter has a start, a peak, and an end, which is the breakdown chart. And then it has patterns. So it has spike and hold, steady rise, dip and recover, etc., etc. So these are the tension targets and the patterns for each of the threads in that chapter. And then here under chapter physics, we also have velocity. And if we come down to scene, we have the type of scene here. And then it goes into the beats, which are for drafting. It also shows thread movement and the plants and the inertia. So this is what cannot happen in this chapter. And we go from there. And then we also have the position of what's happening and what chapter out of how many chapters and word targets. And of course, the POV. So this is what it's working off of, though, is it's working off these tension targets for the chapters. It also works on acts, which will be even more important for really long book projects and, of course, for the series, because it's going to be using those acts to give you an idea of what's going on series-wide. So that is what it's working off of. And I will be releasing the actual prompts to get this outline very soon. I want to test on a full-length novel before I give those out to you guys to make sure that everything is good. But I did test this with multiple chapters. And what I will tell you guys is that the tension targets and the velocity and the patterns, all of that, it is doing a much better job at characterization and breaking things down where we're not getting the constant character quirks and the constant issues with what their internal conflict is and things like that. It's going a lot better so far in the tests that I've done. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay. So that is the charts. Another thing that I added that honestly, maybe only I will use, I'm not sure, but there is a new button here. It's view as Markdown. So if you are creating prompts or adjusting prompts in Paging Poly, which I've been doing a lot very recently because it's so much easier to work in Poly than it is in a chat, even for like smaller things. If you want to copy like a prompt or something like that, it's much easier to do so from Markdown, because if I copy this right here, so I'll copy this to a chart and I'm just going to create a new note. And if I paste it, oh, of course, now it does it the right way. So that it's just going to completely lie. Okay, here, we'll do seed analysis, copy, paste. Oh my gosh, did I accidentally fix this too? Okay, this is funny right now. Maybe I accidentally fixed this somehow, but depending on the day, it will paste as plain text instead of actually like this. So I'm not sure if that's only from certain places to certain places or what just happened with that, but usually it was doing that. So I created this so that I could very quickly copy and paste with the actual, like from the actual Markdown, just because it was working cleaner. Now it's proving me to be a liar. But there's also a table of contents for the Markdown. This isn't edited or editable. It is just a copy and paste that makes it nicer, especially when you're working with something like if you were refactoring the blueprinting or some prompts or whatever, this would be an easier way to do that. But now it's copying, pasting perfectly. So maybe I'm a liar now. I don't know. Let me come back to the blueprint really quick. Let me see if I can find, oh, actually, let me do outline. So another thing that I did add is for the tables, we added this little hover, because if this table is at the bottom of a page, I found out it is near impossible to add a new line after the table to continue a conversation with AI. So I added this so that you can add a new line to the bottom. And also, it was very difficult to delete these tables. And so I added a delete because it was very difficult to get your cursor in the right place where it actually deleted the thread of the entire table, not just like one line at a time. So we did add that just to make things a little bit easier on myself and on you guys. The next thing is we have added it so that you can now, I'm going to make this a little bit larger. If you go to three dots, you can now export a single file to docx. It will be named with the name of the project and then a couple underscores, and then it will show the name of the file itself. You can also, we've extended the multiple select to now have, so you can click, hold shift and click, and that does all the files in between, right? And if I exit, this does, it deselects. But before it did not work with control. And now it works. So if I click this, now I can do ones where it doesn't select all the above. With the shift, I can use control or command, and then I can select individual files. And so now I have three selected. I can hit here and this will export with the project title. And so I can now do that and I can also move just those pieces to a different folder, or I could delete just those pieces, but I can now export as well. And the same thing with shift click, I can now export. So that's just a nice little addition. If you wanted to just export a couple, it will export as one docx if you're doing multiple files with H1 as the file name. So that's a nice little addition. Let's see what else we've got. Okay, this one is another one that I was actually pretty excited about because it was starting to get a little bit much on my local. And actually, let me switch over here. So if you open prompts, this looks a little bit different now. And actually, this is cutting off. We'll fix whatever is happening here with the cutoff. I'm not sure why it's doing that. My guess is because there's something that's not up here, so it's not cutting off here, but we'll fix that in the next release. But here, instead of all of those buttons, so if you had a lot of categories, that category section was getting chunky. And so instead, we have moved to this where you will select your category. It will then only show from that category. And you can also just click here to go to your favorites. And then also, by default, on Classic or on Quick, you get this little preview of what that prompt is. So it's the very top of the task is usually what shows. And if you click here now, this will just show the title. So if you're really familiar with your prompts at this point, you can switch to this and then you can just hop around a little bit easier. So this is great if you're a beginner in Poly. If you're a little bit more of an advanced user, you've been here a while, this is a little bit faster and a little bit easier to move around in. And that is just a little nice quality of life improvement. And it is also in the sequence doc. So now with sequences, instead of the buttons, you will also have here, which I can show you here, which is a little bit more. So now it does the same thing here, where you can just bounce around a little bit easier, or you can do all categories. And so those buttons are out of the way. Okay. Another little guy, we had something, close that, where this refresh model was not actually doing the full refresh. So it was not grabbing new models or getting rid of old ones. Let me see if there's actually any new models that we could. Aha. So this is a new model. Oh, so is this actually. Okay, so I know that these three up here are brand new. So this is great because then I can show you that now. So if I look here and I go to GLM, the new 4.0, 4.6, is that what it said? Oh, 4.6V. Okay. So you will see there's no 4.6V, there's a 4.5V. So if I refresh models, it's going to take a second, and now it should show 4.6V. And so now that is a full refresh. Before you had to go back into settings to do the refresh, the full refresh, where it would get rid of old models and it would bring in the new ones. Now you can do that in here. That refresh model works now. Okay, let's see. Okay. So I think the only other thing we really have is if you go to library now, I'm going to have to go to this one. Let me go to library. Before, when you did shared projects, so projects were shared to you, it did not show anywhere on the project which one it was versus which one it wasn't. And now it does. It shows this badge that says shared with me. I'm actually working on a badge that will also say sharing. so that it will show if it's shared to somebody else, but it is your project. I'm working on that. But right now, at least does show if something was shared with you, which is a nice update. And then hopefully, again, I'll get it working to show if something is shared with somebody else. But for right now, at least, you do have something that shows it was shared with you so that you know when you're looking in your library which ones are your projects versus our projects that you were invited into. And so I think that is it. I will show you there is now a drop down part of series in the create new project, which I will show you. Yeah, over here. Oh, interesting. So if there are no series or universes, you will not see the drop down because you haven't created a project. So that is great. Things we find out together. So that isn't going to be here. That will show up once the series is fully launched for you guys. So the reason the series isn't launched right now is I am currently figuring out how to have, like, I think we're going to need some new file types for series and universe planning. And then I'm trying to figure out how those parsers are going to work. And I'm trying to figure out the blueprinting with having a good visual reference with the charts for things like threads and chains. So I'm still working that out. And one of the things that is really fun about the series and universe is that, to my knowledge, no one has really solved this very well. So I'm working on something that like really doesn't have any other solution that I can go off of. I've looked at a lot of the plotting softwares and none of them work at least the way my brain would work or would help me as an author doing series and universe. So what I'm trying to do with that is a little bit more complicated and I'm still conceptualizing because I really want the series to have a very clear view of where certain like series threads begin and end, what book it begins with, what book it ends with, and having like full wide series arcs being tracked. And then like softer character arcs because series have, especially episodic series, have character arcs that are a lot slower and a lot more gradual than like a book, like a standalone character arc would be in a book. And so I'm trying to make sure that we have visuals for that, not just like a text planner, because I feel like for me, that would be really helpful. And then at the universe level, which will be the next tier up, and I don't know how many of you guys know about writing in universe, it's typically more of something that you see in urban fantasy or sci-fi or things like that, but it's starting to become something that I'm seeing in like small town rom-coms or even like romance, like standalone interconnected, where they're writing in universe. And I think it's really smart because you have like small cities like near each other are being referenced across and you're having like crossover characters. And that's another one where I want some sort of visual where you can see where the series interconnect and you can see the characters that are crossover characters. So you can send those crossover characters to an individual book. So those are the things that I'm thinking really high level on. And again, like I haven't seen anything that would work with how my brain works. And so that's something I'm working on. And hopefully that will be coming fairly soon. Another exciting update that I will give with you guys right now is that I potentially have found a way to create a desktop version of Paging Poly. I don't want to get anybody too excited about it, but I'm pretty excited about it, where I would basically be able to reuse the majority of the UI and the majority of Paging Poly, and then I would just have to do some refactoring on the back end. And this would open up some real big avenues that I was trying to figure out how to handle for formatting specifically. So one of the things with formatting that I looked into with how Atticus seems to be doing it, and I wanted a high level, very professional PDF export. And that is not something I can offer easily in Paging Poly WordPress because we would have to have a separate server running that you guys would be able to access, which would be a premium service and would be a lot more involved on our side, as well as you would have to have an additional thing other than just Paging Poly to handle. And so that was something that we were working on fixing. So there are options where we are still going to have formatting. Don't get me wrong, we're going to still have formatting in WordPress, but the quality of the PDF cannot be as high. So it's perfect for POD. The level of PDF that you'll get in Paging Poly WordPress will be perfectly fine for print on demand. But if you're getting into doing offset printing or special editions or things like that, that's where Paging Poly Desktop is going to become something that is a lot more important because we're going to need something that has a little bit more heft to it. And if we can use your desktop, your laptop as a resource for memory and things like that, we can really offer you guys a full professional offset printing with bleed, like the whole 9 yards. So that was something that has been weighing on me, and also has been weighing on me with not everybody wants to set up a WordPress version. Not everybody even wants to be able to access all of their books via the internet just from multiple devices. For some people, like they only write on their laptop or they only write on their desktop. So I wanted additional avenues for you guys. So that is something I am working on. That's what I'm going to be scratching my head over as you guys play in the new V2.1. And hopefully I will have some updates for you guys more in a week or so about the potential of desktop. And this desktop pathway, in theory, would also work with Windows as well as Mac. I'd be able to compile for both. So these are really exciting things that I'm really hoping I'll be able to bring you guys updates very soon on. If you are not part of the Discord, I highly recommend you getting into the Discord for live updates. I update in there pretty regularly, if not daily. And if you have any questions about paging poly, that is one of the best ways to access me. Real quick note too, when you are in a project, just a real quick, I guess I've never actually said this explicitly, which is on me, but if I say, tell me a joke, this is my go-to test prompt, and I come here and I go to general and I'm on free, so that's fine. Okay, so if I come here to hit go, oh, and I don't want Grok 141 fast, I want, here, we'll just go free. Okay, so if I hit go, and this is generating, and I go to a different note while this is generating, I can't guarantee what happens here. You need to leave the document that you are generating in open. We do not currently have any setup in the back end to handle the generation going to that document that it was started in while you're in a different document. So the only way that you should be running a prompt and also looking at another document or editing another document would be in split view. So if you are in split view, you could be looking at something like this, and then you could be generating in here because the generation only happens on the left side. But if you navigate off of the page that you're generating in, you are probably going to run into some weird errors, or the generation isn't going to show up and things like that. And depending on that, it's also not necessarily going to show here. I think, let's see, actually, it should be this one. What's the one that went weird? And it doesn't necessarily even going to, oh, and I just found a new modal that gets cut off. So that'll be fixed in the next one, but it won't necessarily be able to even save the generation log, especially if it's a longer output. I can't guarantee that generation log will be there for you. I can't guarantee how it will act in the project. So please, if you are doing generations, do not navigate off the page that the generation is happening in. I have been in other tabs while something is generating, and that seems to be fine. But if you are navigating in other documents inside of Paging Poly while trying to run generations, you're going to run into problems. Long term, I hope to have some sort of background process that might be able to process a generation in the back end, so that if you're in another document, it could generate on the back end. Plot Drive does something like this now, but we are not there yet. So if you are doing generations, please stay on the page that you're generating on. Okay, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.